briefing for Friday, the 4th of August. I'm Stephen Ridgway. Salesforce email service has been exploited, or a vulnerability in it has been exploited in a phishing campaign. So, to put it in context, it is possible to send and receive emails from Salesforce as a Salesforce customer. Simplifies things like some of the sales pipeline communications and so on and so forth. But it does mean that you can send emails with an at salesforce.com address. Now, that's a legitimate domain. It's unlikely, or not impossible, it's unlikely that it's blocked on most spam protection solutions. So quite a useful domain to be sending emails from an attacker's perspective. The emails are basically straightforward phishing, asking users to click on a link that leads them to Facebook, where they are a Facebook page where they are eventually prompted basically to put in their user credentials, at which point the attacker takes over the Facebook account. So Salesforce has patched this, but it just dealt with this, but it just goes to show that you have to be careful with emails, even if they appear to be coming from legitimate sources. Have your skeptical head on if they're asking you to do things that you wouldn't necessarily have expected. So, thought pattern for this one would be: why is an email from Salesforce asking me to log into Facebook? If you can't think of a reason, it may be because it's not legit. So a little while ago, we spoke about the Citrix NetScaler ADC and Gateway Server vulnerability, CVE 2023-3519. It was patched last month, and it's got a CVSS score of 9.8, which is it's quite serious. There's been some research done and published via the Hacker News. I'm looking at this one on. There are a large number of compromised devices out there, mostly in Germany, but also France, Switzerland, Italy, Sweden, Spain, Japan, China, Austria, Brazil. So UK as well, although perhaps a little bit less than some of the other countries involved with this. So I think it would be fair to say that if you have not already patched these devices, that you should look very seriously to see whether they have been compromised or not, or treat them as compromised if you're uncertain. If you are rebuilding, make sure that you are rebuilding onto a version which is not vulnerable to this particular exploit. Just a timely reminder that if after a fairly short period of time with these serious vulnerabilities, especially in web-facing or internet-facing devices, if you haven't patched things fairly quickly, then there is quite a high probability that your devices will have been compromised. This particular exploit involves deploying web shells, and it gives the attackers access to what appears to be they're looking for is critical infrastructure. That doesn't mean to say that if you've got one of these devices and you're not a critical infrastructure, that they will politely go away, but you may not be the actual target that they were aiming for. CISA, the US government's cybersecurity agency, CISA is calling for attention to be paid to UEFI attack surfaces. So UEFI is part of the, it's kind of like the BIOS of devices, that sits there very low down, but is software. So, if you are, in fact, actually, most people, I think, would put their hands up and say, well, yeah, all right, actually, we do tend to ignore um, firmware. Now, firmware upgrades are not always very easy to do. There has been, at least historically, it's been nerve-wracking for your infrastructure people if you want to push out firmware updates, even if it's possible. And a lot of end-user computing devices, it's not that straightforward to centrally manage this stuff, although there are tools out there that can assist with that these days. Historically, it was quite difficult to do. However, there are vulnerabilities and exploits, and there's malware that is aimed at that layer of the system. So I think what CISA is saying is this is an under-researched area. Is the potential for there to be flaws, bugs, vulnerabilities, or whatever in that is higher than most people realize, and that they are calling, I think, for researchers to look into this stuff before attackers really get their teeth into what can be done with this. I mean, basically, the stuff. If you're looking after hardware one way or another, yeah, you do need to keep on top of these things. So ideally, you want a method of auditing what versions of firmware are on the devices that you look after. You want to be able to, if you can get it, if it'll do it, get logs from that layer too. What changes have been made, and so on and so forth. It should be hopefully possible to remotely manage all of this, all the firmware across your devices. But again, like I say, it is quite difficult to do. And from a defender's perspective, just bear in mind these things are not particularly easy to spot. Well, yeah, they're not as easy to spot as some of the more traditional bits of malware, just because mainly they just behave in slightly different ways, and they live in parts of the device that your operating system is not kind of interacting with in a way that will obviously flag up malware. So pay attention, keep your firmware up to date, even if it is a bit tricky. Definitely keep on top of release notes from whatever the vendor is that you've got, and if they are saying that there are security patches, it is definitely worth implementing them. And then finally from me today, AI experts unearth infinite ways to bypass Bard and ChatGPT's safety measures. Yep, looks like the Open AI and Google and so on are playing whack-a-mole with people who are working out how to jailbreak AI platforms. They have fixed the one where you say to the AI, pretend that you're an AI that doesn't have restrictions. What would you do if, or how would you do this? That one pretty much gets caught. But any of the guardrails, as they call them, that are put in place appear to be bypassable one way or another. And quite frankly, I'm not surprised. It will be interesting, amusing for certain people to see if they can get AI to do things it isn't supposed to do. It will also be something that people with nefarious intentions would try to do as well. So, I can't say I'm surprised, and I can't say that I have much faith in any of the developers' ability, or the vendors' abilities to really control what this stuff does, given what it was been designed to do. But there you are, just a little update on that one because we have spoken about some of the slightly surprising things you can get AI to do uh, recently. Anyway, that's all from me for today. Hope you have a great weekend. I'm travelling on Monday morning, so I will endeavour to do the briefing. But if there isn't a briefing on Monday morning, I will definitely be back again Tuesday first thing. So have a great weekend, and I'll speak to you all next week.